Hey guys, hopefully that this recording is going to work okay. I'm glad you're here. I do not like recording with a headset usually because the sound is not always perfect. So I'll try to keep it, pretty minimal so that hopefully you won't hear too much static. We are going to go over today slope-intercept form. So the first thing I want you guys to, first of all, realize you had this assignment last class. Now, I'm going to collect it. I want the substitute to collect it at the end or beginning of class today, whatever she or he prefers. But I'm hoping that you guys remember. Let me see if I can get my pen to work. And that pen is not working, so give me 1 second. Okay, I think I got it fixed. So you've got this worksheet, and I think it only had like 8 or 10 questions on it, guys. But for questions 1 and 2, to me those were the most difficult. They want you to make a table of values. So basically, if it says f of x is equal to 2x minus 7, and you need to make a table of values. I'm hoping you guys remember we learned last class that anytime you see f of x, that can be replaced with y equals. And then you're going to bring the 2x minus 7 down. Now guys, once you have your equation with the x and y, you should be able to go into that calculator, hit your y equals button. I'm going to clear whatever was in there, and if it was f of x equals 2x minus 7, I'm going to come in place of y equals, I'm going to type y equals 2x minus 7. Now once that's in there, we're going to hit the second button and then go to our table like we've done several times in class. Now, guys, my directions say use -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2 for my input-output table. So I am going to come here and I'm going to make an input-output table with those exact same values because I have to follow those directions. Once I have those exact same values, then I'm looking in my calculator and I'm thinking, what's across from the -2? Guys, find your -2 in your x column, and across from it you've got a -11. Then you've got a -9. And I'm going to let you guys fill the rest of it in. So 1 and 2 are going to be your most difficult questions on that homework. For number 2, the reason why it's so difficult is because it's not in the correct format. Guys, in the calculator it has to be y equals. And if you look at number 2, it says 2y equals 4x plus 6. So I've got two sides of that equation, and I need to get the y by itself. Well, guys, isn't that 2 times y? So to get rid of multiplying by 2, I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides. That's going to leave me with y is equal to. Now make sure you divide each piece by 2. So 4x divided by 2 is going to be a 2x, and then 6 divided by 2 is going to be a positive 3. And now you have an equation that you can type into your y equals screen. And then you should be able to get the outputs, or the y values, for that equation. Now, I'm hoping you did this over the weekend, last night. You will be able to do the rest of this, and then I want the substitute to collect it. We'll go over the rest of it next class, okay? But today, you guys need to really kind of focus on learning something called slope-intercept form. So, this is the part of the class that is your notes. I know you're listening to a recording. I know you can rewind it and fast forward it. I know you can totally zone me out, guys. But you have to get graphing slope-intercept form. So I would recommend take out a blank piece of paper, pause the video right now, go get a blank piece of paper, and make yourself some notes. Now, if I'm ever going too fast, the cool thing is you can pause the recording and catch up with what's on the screen. So we're going to graph from slope-intercept form. So guys, it's really important that you realize slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So when I ask you what is slope-intercept form, you need to be able to tell me, oh, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Now, this shouldn't be a secret. You guys, this should be very much a review. You learned last year, and some of you even told me earlier this year, that the m, the number sitting in front of the x, that is known as the slope. Guys, it's also known as, aka, the slope is also known as the rate of change, and we're going to get into that in the next day or two. But today you need to realize that the slope is that m value. And I'm hoping you realize that slope is rise over run. And this should be review. So slope is rise over run. Now, the next piece of information that's really important that we can notice in this equation is the b. Whatever number is on the end. And notice I'm highlighting the plus sign, because if the n said -3, the b value would be -3. But the number on the end is your y-intercept. It's also known as the constant in the problem, but we're going to focus today on the y-intercept. And what you need to realize is the y-intercept, if I have a graph, and I've got my x-axis and my y-axis, guys, the y-intercept is wherever that line goes through the y-axis. So it's the point that the line is going to touch the y-axis. Now, why do we use slope-intercept form? Number one, it's a nice quick form to work with. We can see which equations are going to be changing faster based on their rate of change or the slope. But it's also a really easy equation or form to graph from. So I want to look at graphing. Now, actually I want to look at 4 kinds of slope. So, just let's review real quick. Slope is rise over run, correct? Now that's the second time I've said it, so guys, if I'm repeating it, it's pretty important. Slope is rise over run. If your slope number is a positive number, you are going to have a positive slope, and that thing is going to look like you're climbing up a hill. Like if you read it from left to right, like that dude, if he had to walk it, he is going uphill. So that's my positive slope. Well, guys, if the number in front of the x is a negative number, it's going to be downward. So it's going to be a negative slope. So guys, an equation with a positive slope would be like y equals 2x plus 1. The slope right here is the 2. If it had a negative slope, it might be y is equal to negative 3x plus 1. And the slope right there is a negative 3. Because the slope is the number in front of the x. Now those are the 2 most common kinds of slope. You're also going to have a slope of 0 and a slope that's undefined. Now, when you deal with a 0 slope, when you graph 0, it's actually going to be just a horizontal line. Because guys, 0 over any number, let's say 0 over 2, that's equal to 0. So I'm going to make my first dot, I'm going to rise 0 and run 2. Well guys, if I'm here and I rise 0, I'm not going to go up anywhere. But I would go over 2 and make my next dot, and it's going to be a horizontal line. So that would look like y is equal to 0x plus maybe 3. But guys, 0 times x, we don't usually write that down. 0 times anything is 0. So lines that are going to have a 0 slope are going to look like just y equals a number. Okay? Now, the last kind of slope we're going to talk about is if the line is vertical. Guys, this should hopefully be a review from last year, but if that line is vertical, it is an undefined slope. Another way that some teachers teach it and that you'll see it is they'll say it has no slope. Guys, picture standing at the top of a cliff. If I'm standing at the top of that cliff and I decide I want to ski off of the side of this vertical line, it's not going to turn out too well. I am going to take off and I'm going to lose traction with the side of the cliff and I'm going to plummet, unfortunately, to my death. Because you can't ski down a vertical line. So it has no slope. It is undefined. It is not possible. I mean, it's possible because it's a vertical line, but it's no slope. So the equations here are going to look like x is equal to a number. And we'll come back to that more. But for now, you just need to realize that if you have a line that's going straight up and down, that is an undefined slope. If you have a line that's horizontal, that slope is 0. If you have a line that's like you start on the left-hand side and you go downhill, that's a negative slope, and if it's uphill, it's a positive slope. So you need to know those 4 different kinds of slope. Now, can we take that information and add it to what we've already learned to be able to graph a line? Guys, you see the graph on this page. You are going to need graph paper in order to do this. Now, I have got some stickers that the substitute has to hand out, and you can peel off one little graph for each one of these problems. Please don't waste these stickers, guys. They cost a lot of money, and I pay for them out of my own pocket. Use them when you need them, but I don't want to find them stuck on the table, stuck on the chair, stuck on other people. I need you to be responsible. Okay, so pause the video and write down these steps, and then you can hit play. Okay, so you've already written down the steps. Guys, the very first thing when you see an equation and it says to graph it, because you're going to have like 6 of these for an assignment, the very first thing you want to do is name the slope and y-intercept. So if I'm looking at this equation over here, y equals 3x minus 1, think of your slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. You're going to have to memorize that thing, people. Y equals mx plus b is my slope-intercept form. Now guys, what's in front of the x in this question? Well, a 3. So my slope is going to be a plane 3. The next question is going to be, what's your y-intercept? So you're going to look at the very end of the question where the b would be, and you know the y-intercept here, is it a positive 1 or a negative 1? Yeah, that's a minus 1. So it's a negative 1. Okay, so right there we did the first step. We named the slope and the y-intercept. Now the second step is we have to plot the y-intercept. Guys, it's easier than you think. If my y-intercept is negative 1, I'm going to come on the y-axis and go to negative 1 and make a dot. Once I have that dot, I move on to step 3. I'm not really moving my pencil. I'm keeping my pencil right there on the y-intercept. And then it says do the slope, rise over run. Well guys, the slope is a plane old 3, so I have to turn it into a fraction in order to have rise over run. So instead of just 3, I'm going to think of the slope as 3 over 1. So now I know my slope is 3 over 1. So from this dot, I'm going to go up 3 and over 1. Now, when you do this, you want to count your jumps. So I'm going to go up 1 spot, 2 spots, 3 spots, and then over 1 spot. And right there, I'm going to make another dot. I went up 3 over 1, rise 3 over 1. So if I do it again, I'm going to go up another 3 from this spot that I just made. I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, and over 1. And I could continue to do this. Now, this may blow some of your minds, but if I have 3 over 1, isn't going up 3 and to the right 1 the same as going down 3 and back 1? Because isn't negative divided by negative a positive? So from that y-intercept, I could have gone down 3 and backwards 1. And then down 3 and backwards 1. Well now guys, I have several different dots, so I can go and I can find my straight edge and I can connect them in a straight line. Now this is easier for you because your graphs aren't supersized like for me on the board. But you're just going to draw a straight line with arrows, because those arrows tell you that line keeps going all the way up and to the right and all the way down to the left. Okay, so recap what we just did. They gave me an equation. Here, let me change. They gave me an equation. Once they gave me an equation, I wrote down what the slope and y-intercept is. From there, I went to my graph and I decided to graph the y-intercept is -1. So I graphed my -1, and then from there I'm going to do whatever the slope is. So if my slope was 3, I changed it into a fraction, 3/1. So I'm going to go up 3 and over 1. Once you do that several times, connect those dots and you've got your line. Okay, so if you need to, pause it, make sure you get that down on your paper. Let's look at the next one. Okay, now it's really nice when they give them to you in slope-intercept form. They're not always going to do that. So guys, the first question I have is this thing in the right format? Is it in the form y equals mx plus b? Well, it's got the y's alone, it's got a number in front of the x, and then something at the end. So right here, I know that my slope is -2/3. Right here, I know that my b is 5. Well guys, isn't my b my y-intercept? So my y-intercept is 5. Now, I want to just take a second to explain something. When they have a -2/3, the negative sign is in the very front. That means the whole number is negative. You can write it either as a -2/3, or you can write it as a 2/3. But notice there's only one negative sign. If it was a negative divided by a negative, you'd end up with a positive, and you're changing the problem. Okay, so let's go back. We found our slope, we found our y-intercept. Guys, we start with the y-intercept. There's a little thing that says you begin with b, and then you move your slope. So we're going to begin with our 5. So on our y-axis, we're going to go up to 5 and make a dot. Then we're going to come to our slope, and we're going to move -2/3. Guys, slope is rise over run. So from that dot that I just made, not from the middle, but from the spot that I just made, I'm going to go down 2 and to the right 3. Well guys, once I have 2 dots, I can connect them. Right there, I'm good to go. I could go down 2 more and over 3 again. Or, if I'm looking at 2/3, I could go from this origin, from the y-intercept. I could go up 2 and back 3. Up 2 and back 3. Once you have those dots, connect them with a straight edge and put arrows on each end. Okay? Hopefully it's starting to click and make sense. Now here's the third one. Maybe, if it'll flip. Here is the third one, and we have a problem. Now guys, if you didn't get done, rewind it a little bit and pause it. Finish that last one and then move to number 3. Okay, go ahead and copy 3 down. Go ahead and put your sticker on your paper so that you're ready to graph it. We have a little bit of a problem here because is it in slope-intercept form? Does it look like y equals mx plus b? No, it doesn't. First of all, our equal sign is over here. Our x and our y's are on the same side. And then beyond that, my y has a number with it. So I have to rearrange this thing. Guys, to solve this one for y, the first step is to move the 2x. So I'm going to minus 2x from each side. That's going to get me 2x's will cancel. negative 1/4 y is equal to, now can I combine a 2 and a negative 2x? No. So I'm going to put the negative 2x plus 2. Now all's good here, but I still don't have my y by itself. Guys, to get the y by itself, isn't this negative 1/4 times y? So I have to come in and divide by negative 1/4. Now, we haven't seen this too much, and we're going to talk about it in a day or two. But guys, on the left-hand side, negative 1/4 divided by negative 1/4 cancels, leaving just the plain y. That was my goal. On the right-hand side, I have to take both of the parts up top and divide by negative 1/4. So the first thing I'm going to do is negative 2x divided by negative 1/4. So in my calculator, I'm going to do negative 2 divided by. Now I need to type in the negative 1/4. So I'm going to go to alpha y equals and hit number 1 to put my fraction in. Negative 1/4. Then I'm going to hit enter. Okay, so when I divide that, I get an 8. But guys, it was a negative 2x, so it's going to be an 8x. Y'all with me? Now the next thing I have to do is I have to go back and take the 2 and divide it by negative 1/4. Okay? So I'm going to go back to my calculator, and now I'm going to do 2 divided by alpha y equals, and I hit the wrong button, so I'm going to quit to get back to my main screen. 2 divided by negative 1/4. And it's going to give me a negative 8. Now, some of you guys can do that without the calculator, and that's great. But if you need the calculator, don't hesitate to use it. So why did I do all that? Because the question wants me to graph it. And guys, if I look at that equation I just got, is it in slope-intercept form? The y's alone. The other things are on the other side. Guys, isn't the slope 8? And what's the y-intercept? Yeah, it's this number here on the end. It's negative 8. So once I have that information, I'm going to be able to graph this thing. Okay, so where do I start? Yes, I start with the y-intercept. So the y-intercept's negative 8, so I'm going to start in the middle and count down 8 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there's my y-intercept. Now from that spot, I have to rise over run. Guys, if my slope was a plain old 8, that means 8 over 1. So, from this negative 8, I'm going to count up 8 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But it's 8 over 1, so now I have to go over 1 spot. Right there is my next dot. Well, guys, I could count up 8 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and over 1. There's my next dot. And now I need a line that's going to connect those 3 points. Realize, guys, you're probably not going to draw, like here where I did to show you how I was counting, you're not going to draw that. So that's not going to be on your paper. And I just erased too much. But once you have those dots, you're going to come in with a straight edge and do a much better job than I just did and connect those 3 points. Okay, so you're done with that one. You got it all copied. Now we got kind of a crazy one looking at us. 3y equals 9. Well, guys, I know I have to solve it for y. I have to get that variable alone because slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So to get that y alone, I'm going to come in here and divide each side by 3. That way it'll get me a 1y, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So I've got my equation. Now, we have an issue because my equation doesn't necessarily look like slope-intercept form. Okay? Now, we learned something back at the very beginning that we're going to talk about here in a minute. Guys, how can this x value just totally go away? The only way that x is going to disappear is if there's a 0. So for this question, my slope is 0 and my y-intercept is 3. So to graph it on your y-axis, you're going to go up to 3. And then for a slope of 0, well, that's like 0 over 1. So from that y-intercept, I'm going to go up and down nowhere. Rise 0 and run 1. I could do it again. Rise 0 and run 1. So I'm still going to get a line, but the line is going to be a horizontal line where y is equal to 3. So back when we were talking about the different kinds of slope, I'm going to see if I can go back real quick. Back when we were talking about the different kinds of slope, didn't we kind of mention that if it's a horizontal line, it's going to be y is equal to a number? And if it's a vertical line, it's going to be x is equal to a number. We'll come to the next page because this is probably something that even really, really good honor students, really, really good Algebra 1 students still tend to miss this information. So guys, this is huge. Star it. Put bubbles around it. I don't care, but make sure you know that it's huge. Guys, anytime you're graphing, if x is equal to a number, plain number, no other variables. For instance, you have x is equal to -3. I messed up these notes. Oh my goodness, that's kind of embarrassing. Let me see if I can switch this. Guys, if it's x is equal to, it's a vertical line. Make sure you fix that up. And if it's y is equal to, it's a horizontal line. Now, if x is -3, you're going to go on your x-axis. And you're going to go back to 3. Okay, so right here is where x is 3. Guys, x is 3 all the way up and all the way down. That's why it's a vertical line. So anytime it's x is equal to a number, it's going to be straight up and down. Now, I remember that because if I see the word vertical, guys, if I were to, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this right now. See if yeah, get just that little number. If I were to do that, and then let's say I want to copy it. So I copied it, and now I'm going to twist it and move it. Do you see how the two V's actually make an X? Now that may not work for you, but that's how I remember that if it's x equals, it's a vertical line. Okay, now let's look at what if it's y equals, okay? Some of you can remember these things, some of you need my little crazy tips. Guys, if it says y is equal to 7, it's going to be a horizontal line. So on your y-axis, you're going to go up to 7, and it's going to be a straight, flat line all the way across where y is 7. Now, this may be another crazy thing, but I remember that because if I write y, and if I take that y, let me see if I can grab just my y. May not let me. I'm too close to all the other things. Okay, let me try it over here in the blue. This is my little memory technique. If I have a y, and I take that y and I spin it. Come on. Seriously? Okay. If I take that y, I've got it highlighted, and I'm going to flip it. Now, it's still a y, isn't it? I didn't change that letter. It's still a y, but it also looks like an H for the word horizontal. So guys, anytime you have a y equals, you're going to get a horizontal line at whatever number where the y is. Okay, so hopefully you are all good with slope-intercept form. You're good with graphing a vertical and a horizontal line. I don't really want to do too many of these because I know they're not on your homework. But guys, if I don't give you an equation and I ask you to graph it, could you do that? And actually, this question says write an equation. Wow. How do I get from this information and put it into an equation? Well, they gave me the slope and the y-intercept, didn't they? Well, that's slope-intercept form. Guys, isn't my m my slope? Hey, so I can take that 5 and drop it right into that spot. Y equals 5x. And very similarly, guys, isn't my plus b, isn't that my y-intercept? So I'm going to take the 8 and drop it right into that spot. And I'm done. Oh, except for I have to graph it. Well, guys, let me pause the recording for a second. Okay, so guys, to graph this, don't you start at the y-intercept? You always begin with the y-intercept, which is an 8. So I'm going to count up to 8 and put my dot. Now, I move the slope. Well, guys, the slope is 5 over 1. Guys, I'm going to have a really hard time going up 5 spots. I mean, I could guess 3, 4, 5, and over. I could kind of guess at it. But guys, if it's 5 over 1, then it's the same as negative 5 over negative 1. So I could go down 5 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and back 1. And I'm going to have the same line as if I would have gone up 5 and to the right 1. Okay, so your assignment, you're going to get a worksheet, and I think it only has 6 questions on it that you have to graph. Guys, I want you to graph these. If you want to check them in your calculator by typing them into y equals, go for it. But I want you to graph them using slope-intercept form, because we have to get good at this form so we can build on it. Okay? Now, let me see. Let me show you the picture with the homework. The homework is graphing lines in slope-intercept form. My guess is you will get it done in class, and once you get it done, I would love for you to go ahead and give it to the substitute. Okay? Just remember, y equals mx plus b, that's slope-intercept form. Wherever the m is, that's your slope, which is rise over run. And whatever the b is, that's your y-intercept. So first write them out, and then begin by graphing the y-intercept, and then move the rise over run for the slope, and draw your line. Okay, I hope y'all have a great day. I'm sorry I couldn't be here, but I am in that lovely meeting down in the library. Thanks, guys. Bye.